Hi there mappers, and welcome to this short tutorial video where I will show you how to add additional buttons to your toolbars in Campaign Cartographer 3+. This video is a companion video to a blog article I'm releasing at the same time. You don't have to read the blog article to use this video, but they do contain additional details which you might find useful. The blog article is linked in the description below. So let's go to the Campaign Cartographer 3+ interface. When we are going to add new buttons here, there are two things we need to be aware of. The first is that Campaign Cartographer have multiple toolbars. In my default install here, you can see that there are two toolbars at the top, another two on the left, and finally two more on the right. There are also two more toolbars that are not shown by default. The two custom icon bars, I can turn them on. You can now see I have two additional blank toolbars at the top, which can also hold buttons. So we have basically 8 different toolbars we can place these buttons on. Additionally, Campaign Cartographer 3+ have many modes, like the overland mode, the dungeon mode, the city designer mode, character artist mode, and so on. Each of these modes have their own menu files. And if we want buttons to appear, we have to edit the correct menu file. For example, if I want a button to appear in the dungeon section, when I have the dungeon menus open, I need to edit the dungeon file. And what's important to know here is that these menu files describe the complete interface for Campaign Cartographer for each of them. That means that dungeon menu also includes all of these common buttons. Even if you see these buttons in all the different modes, they are still defined in each file individually. So if I make a change in the overland file, for example, that change will not propagate to the dungeon file automatically. So we need to make sure to edit the right file. Okay, so let's just jump into this and do a small edit. To find the menu files, I need to go to the Campaign Cartographer data directory. I find the easiest way to go to that is to start Campaign Cartographer, like I have done here. And then on the command line, type opendoc space, and then the @ sign, and hit enter. As you might be aware of, the @ sign is a reference to the data directory, so this is just a quick way of opening the data directory. Inside the data directory, there should be many files with the file extension .mnu. These are menu files. I have a bunch of these. I can actually sort by type, and I can see that I have a lot of menu files in my installation here. Now, it might depend a bit on your Windows setup, what it calls this type. It might be called something else, and the reason for that is that if some other program you have installed claim the extension .mnu, it might actually refer to that completely different program that doesn't have anything to do with Campaign Cartographer 3+. This is just how Windows recognizes extensions. It uses these 3 last letters, and if multiple programs want to use the same files, it might sometimes be a conflict in what Windows reports. To be able to see the .mnu extension, I have here, I can also go to view and make sure that file name extension is shown. Windows likes to hide this by default. You can just turn it on here. This is Windows 10. It's slightly different in Windows 11, but you should find it similarly. So among all these menu files, which one should I edit? Well, as I just said, there are one menu file for each mode in Campaign Cartographer. So if I want to edit the dungeon mode, the DD3 mode, I edit the file called dungeon menu. If I want to edit the city menus, I have the city menu. And the main overland file is this fcw32.mnu. It's not called overland because this is just the default menu file for the program, and this is the default name. That's why it's kind of strange compared to the others. Now, these menu files are just plain text files, but it might be then when you try to open them that Windows do not recognize them. Let me double click on this one. You see, Windows did not know how to open it. But these are standard text files, can be opened in Notepad. So the easiest way is just click More Apps and just pick Notepad from the list. You might have another preferred editor. I often like to use Notepad++ or something similar, but Notepad is a good enough choice. So Notepad. And if you leave this check mark on the bottom, it means that Windows will in the future always use Notepad. If you don't want that behavior, just uncheck it. So you can actually see that the file icons now change to Notepad icons on all of them. So what I'm looking at here is a Campaign Cartographer 3 menu file. This describes all the menus in the programs. These first few lines are actually the names of the toolbars, the file toolbar, the symbol toolbar, and so on. And we can find, if I go back to Campaign Cartographer 3 Plus and open, it's actually the names which we can see in the Screen Tools dialog. And just below starts the definition of the buttons themselves. A button definition has a few important parts to it. Let's just check this one for an example. What does this line really mean? Well, it starts by the hash sign and the number 309. This tells me that it belongs to toolbar number 3 and it's button number 9 or in the 9th position on this toolbar. So the toolbar number 3, I can go up here to the top and figure out which one that is. That should be left toolbar 1. And it's the 9th button. So let's count down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's not the 9th button, but there is a reason for that. That's because we start counting at 0, which means that the top button is really button number 0. So that means that the erase here is the 9th or button number 9, or more correctly the 10th button. So the top one is 0. You can see that here the CC2 land is in position 0, and that's the first one. Actually, I'm showing the wrong set here, so let me go back to overland because it's in land mode. But the erase which I was looking at existed in both toolbars. So the first one tells which toolbar and which position. And what's important here is that this is the absolute position on the toolbar. This means there can only be one button in each position. So if you want a button between number 309 and 310, well, then you have to go around and change a bit on the numbers. You cannot just add another one in between here and have it display. It can only be one with each number, and the number tells the position. The second part here, CC2 erase, is the name of the image that is being used on the button. This is an internal reference to a set of internal images. I'm going to link in the description to a list of these identifiers so you can find them. But you can also just look through these menu files and see them. So this is just the button image, not the function of the button. Then we have in square bracket the tooltip. When I hover over a button, I see a tooltip. Takes a little time for it to show. Erase. And that's the tooltip right here in brackets. And finally, we have the command Campaign Cartographer 3 tries to run when you click the button. The vertical line before the command means if there is another command currently running, just cancel that command and do the new one. If we do not cancel the additional command, Campaign Cartographer tries to run it while the other one is running. Some commands are designed to do this, but most commands are not and will just cause an error. So having a cancelling the previous command is usually what we want to do. And the last part here is just the actual command being run. And that's the same thing as we can type on the command prompt to just run a command. So these are the main parts. There are some additional parts. For example, in curly brackets, you have the right-click menu, for example, if you want a right-click action, but I'm not going to go into that now. So let's just see how can I actually create a new button. I'm thinking in Campaign Cartographer that I'm just going to add some additional buttons after the last button here on the symbol toolbar. A lot of space here, and I can add my own buttons here. So the symbol toolbar, as we can see, is the 6th toolbar in the system. So let me scroll down and find the 600 numbers. They are down here. You might have noticed as well that these are not in order. They don't have to be in order, it doesn't matter. But they should be in order within each toolbar. That is, all the 600 numbers should be grouped together, all the 400 numbers should be grouped together, and so on. They don't have to be, but it's much easier to maintain and understand the file. So I want a little bit of spacing. So what I see is that the last button, that's the 3 we are seeing here, that's this button, is 608. So I'm gonna call it 611. That means that I'm leaving position 609 and 610 as spacing. So what icon do I want? Well, I have an icon already in mind, which is the tree building symbol from City Designer, and the identifier for that is cat icon 8. Again, I will link the list below in the description so you can find these icons yourself. Keep the syntax. You can see that I'm using a comma as a separator after the number and a colon as a separator after the image. You can see it's the same done with all the other buttons. Then I can add a tooltip. It's a tooltip for you. And finally, we have to decide what is this command going to do. Well, I'm going to make a command that loads up a symbol catalog. So I'm gonna cancel whatever previous command is running, if any. And the command for loading a symbol catalog is just catalog. You can find this list of commands in the help files for Campaign Cartographer, or if you have the Tome of Ultimate Mapping, there is a spreadsheet with all the different commands you can use. So the word catalog, but I also have to tell it which catalog to pick up. Okay, I'm making a button now that can load one of the recent free monthly symbols, which has been released every month for some months now. So I'm gonna pick the first one, and that resides in symbols, maps, ms monthly one.fsc. So this is just the path to the symbol catalog. As you might remember, and as I said earlier, the @ symbol is a reference to the Campaign Cartographer 3 Plus data directory, and this is then the path inside of that data directory. So this is actually the command catalog and the file to load. I'm gonna just put a semicolon at the end. We need that semicolon to end the command. If we don't have that, the button won't work. And I can now save this file. I'm actually just going to restart Campaign Cartographer now. Close it and start it. And we can see I now have a new button. If I click this button, you can see it loads the catalog. It also has a nice little tooltip. So let me just make one more quick button. Number 612. So one of the things you sometimes need to do in Campaign Cartographer 3 Plus is to adjust the screen. The screen is a white polygon intended to cover up everything outside the map border, but sometimes it just becomes too small and you need to draw a new one. I want to make a button that can do this automatically for me. So again, it's button number 612. Remember, we cannot have the same number more than once. Let me call it CCD panel. That's the icon I've picked for it. And I have a tooltip, screen, and we have some rather new commands called color auto, which automatically generates a screen for us. And we have another command, color del, which is used to delete the old screen. So I'm gonna make a button that can actually run two commands one by one. So the first command is color del. Color del needs as an argument the sheet to delete. So the sheet the screen is on is called screen by default. Notice that this will delete everything on the screen sheet. It shouldn't be anything else but the screen there, but just the word warning, it does delete it without warning. And now the button would have been done. This is a working button, but all it does is deleting the current screen. I want to add a new one, so color auto. So notice this one. This is two commands in a row. One command with its argument terminated by semicolon, and then another. So menu files like this can actually run multiple commands in sequence. They're not limited to just one. Just put the semicolon between each command and they will be run just fine. Again, save the file. These are technically configuration files, so make sure that you do not make any mistakes when editing these files. If I do a small editing mistakes, you risk that the file won't work. And also don't do things like leaving blank lines and things like this. This file should not have any blank lines. Gonna close this again. Done editing. Gonna close and restart Campaign Cartographer to load the file. You can load it without restarting Campaign Cartographer, but it's the fastest. We now have two buttons. I want to test my new screen button, so let me just find a little example map. So this is a map I did in an earlier live stream, and maps always have a screen around them. We can check the screen with the list commands, or maybe this one doesn't have. Yeah, it should have. It's just too big already, I think. There you can see it's quite a big screen around it because I had this big bridge symbol I needed to cloak. So this is the screen, but let me now imagine that I actually put something out here. This is outside the screen. Okay, I can now go to CC3 and hit the screen button, and it completely redraws the screen. That bridge piece out here is still out there. It's now just being covered by the screen. You might also notice that I had to click the CC3 button. That's because, as I explained earlier, I only made this button in overland mode. They are not available in dungeon mode. And since this was a dungeon map, it was in dungeon mode. I think it was actually in symbol set 4 mode. So I had to go back to get this button. So if you want it to appear in the dungeon file as well, then I might have needed to edit either the symbol set 4 menu or the dungeon menu, or actually both if I wanted it in both cases. So that's why I had to maneuver to the other add-on in this case. Okay, this was a very short introduction on how to make buttons for the toolbars. Read the blog articles if you want to know any more details. Okay, thank you for watching. Have a nice day.